Listen to the tale of a stalwart male who lost his well-known nanny. Donald was his name, and golf was the game that made him gray like his granny.
Maurice Denham, as the oldest member, tells another tale by P.G. Wodehouse. Today, the Purification of Rodney Spelvin.
And dirty in the locker room every night. He'd sing of his awful plight. Oh, the dirty little bill and roll it out.
In golf, as elsewhere, age has its privileges. On a dismal winter's day, players are out on the links, toiling against the wind and rain. But in the cosy warmth of the clubhouse, the oldest member relaxes in his usual chair by the fireside. Ah, he's seen you. He's moving his copy of Golfing Matters from the next armchair.
Ah, there you are. Sit down, sit down. I kept this sheet for you. Glad you're here again. I've a bit more to tell you about that couple I mentioned the other day. The two golfers got mixed up with the poet, remember? Jane Packard and William Bates, or Jane and William Bates as they became, once they'd seen him off. Jane, you'll recall, had a romantic streak. And before she did the right thing and wed her golfing partner, she had a fling with that bounder Rodney Spelvin. Well, luckily, he fell by the wayside, and she and William settled down to a life of married bliss, playing golf all day and talking golf all evening. Rodney Spelvin was forgotten, apart from some reminders on the wireless when a new Spelvin verse play was broadcast or a new Spelvin book reviewed. In due course, a son arrived, and they named him Braid Varden Bates after those two golfing giants. And it was this innocent child who unwittingly triggered the drama I'm about to unfold. Unlike so many sloppy modern parents, Jane and William were resolved to bring up their son on strict lines. He must be shown what's good in life, what's important. He must learn to do what's right. To this end, when Braid was 6, they invited William's younger sister Abigail to stay. Abigail, you see, had actually reached the semi-final of the Ladies' Open. She was not just a fine golfer, but also a natural teacher. After Braid's first lesson, William took him to practice putting, while Jane and Abigail had tea together at home. Jane was fond of Abigail. She saw her as the little sister she herself had always longed for.
So you feel Braid's got it in him?
Absolutely. Well, with you two for parents, it would be odd if he hadn't.
Of course, we didn't want to rush him. He didn't have a club in his hands till he was 3.
I think that's wise. It's silly to let them get stale.
Another cake?
Thanks. He's got a good eye, and once I can get him to keep it on the ball, there'll be no stopping the lad.
Well, that's good news. Will you be able to coach him every afternoon while you're here?
Gladly. Except on Friday. I'll have to make it in the morning. I have to meet a man in London in the afternoon.
A man? How exciting. Who is he?
A man I met last summer. A rather special man, as a matter of fact.
Do you love him?
Like Billy-o.
Does he love you?
Sometimes I think so.
What's his name?
Rodney Spelvin.
What?
Oh, I know he writes the most awful bilge, but he's really an absolute darling.
You love Rodney Spelvin?
If he beckoned in the middle of a medal round, I'd have to go to him.
Jane was shaken to the core. If you put a driver in Abigail's hands, she could paste the ball into the next county, but in other ways, the girl seemed fragile and vulnerable. She was one of those sweet rose-leaf girls to whom good men instinctively give a stroke a hole, and on whom bad men naturally prey. And Jane had sadly concluded that Spelvin was a bad man, at least where the fair sex were concerned. As a noted writer, his private life was much reported in the gossip columns. One read of bohemian parties at his Chelsea home and many young women who passed through his life. Well, these were mostly actresses and could take care of themselves, but Jane didn't want the innocent Abigail to suffer a broken heart. She felt she must save the girl from Spelvin's clutches. But how? Jane spent a sleepless night, and next day anxiety ruined her golf. After lunch, while Abigail coached her son, she sought solace in the village cinema. And there, in the warm bosom of the mascot picture-drome, fate seemed to point the way. That was the tale she told me when she sought my advice at the club here as we sat together on the terrace.
Obviously, I can't just sit back and let Abigail become another of Rodney's playthings.
I've met the man. I regard him as a wart on the face of society.
Well, he's not quite as bad as that. But definitely a danger to women.
Why not just warn her off? Tell her your own experience, plus what you've heard since.
I think not. Telling a girl a man's a bad lot usually drives her into his arms.
I fear you're right. Should you not consult William about this?
I daren't. You know his view of Rodney Spelvin. If he heard his sister was meeting him, he'd turn her out of the house.
No.
And bang would go Braid's coaching, just when he's nearly mastered the niblick.
Yes, it is perplexing.
Listen, I've got a plan. I just want to hear what you think.
But tell me, my dear, I'm all ears.
It came to me yesterday in the picture dome.
I was there recently, saw that film about Abraham Lincoln. Oh, good heavens, you're not thinking of shooting the fellow.
Oh, no, I hope that won't be necessary. This week's film's called Forgotten Love, and it's all about money not bringing happiness. Or happiness not bringing money. I can't remember which.
I like a good Western, you know, Buck Jones or Tom Mix.
Forgotten Love stars Gloria Gooch, and she has a problem just like mine.
Indeed?
Her young sister's fallen for this ghastly libertine, and Gloria is afraid he'll ruin her. So, at the risk of losing the man she loves, she goes to the libertine's flat to beg him to spare her sister. And Gloria looks like the first girl he ever loved, so he does it.
Does what?
Spares Gloria's sister.
Well,
Well, I could do that, couldn't I? I ought to do it. Rodney must still feel something for me. If I ask him to lay off Abigail, perhaps he will. What do you think? Should I go to him?
Well, it seems worth a try. Of course, William mustn't know you're seeing Spelvin. He might misunderstand. But in general, it appears a sound scheme. Now, you're surprised that I approved Jane's private visit to a man of dubious morals, but I knew Spelvin to be a weedy specimen, whereas Jane was a sturdy girl who, but for an innate love of animals, could have felled an ox with a single blow. I could see no harm coming from their meeting as long as William knew nothing of it. This last point made the project tricky. Gloria Gooch had been well-placed vis-à-vis secret visits to libertines, her young man being in the army. For Jane, it was more difficult. Jane and William played 2 rounds of golf each morning and 1 each afternoon, which rather cut her time. But fate was still on her side. Next day at breakfast, William announced that business called him to London.
Sorry about the short notice, old girl. Just had this letter from Bracewell. He needs my signature on some papers.
That's all right, William. I know you have your work to do.
Pity we'll miss 3 rounds of golf. I expect you'll play with Abigail?
No, she's taken Braid to the Golf Museum at Dorford today.
Oh, so that's why I saw them going out of the front gate. Look, tell you what, why don't you come up to town with me?
No, I don't think I will, thank you.
Give you lunch somewhere.
Thanks all the same, but I'd rather stay here. I want to do some putting practice.
Oh, well, just as you please, old girl. Perhaps we can get around this evening.
Remorse gnawed at Jane's vitals. She'd never deceived William before. She kissed him with an extra fondness as he left to catch the 10 o'clock train, and then she hurried to the telephone. She recalled Spelvin's number and prayed it was still the same, and sure enough, a few moments later, she heard a voice from long ago.
Hello?
Is that you, Rodney?
I'm not sure. I only just woke up. Who's that?
Mrs. Bates.
Ah, yes?
Rodney, this is urgent. Can we lunch at the Alcazar today, 1 o'clock?
Lunch? With you, my dear, of course. The Alcazar at 1. Now, do excuse me. I've got bare feet.
Jane hung up and went to her room to try on the hats, heartened by Rodney's response. If he was so pleased to hear from her, surely he'd cooperate in the matter of Abigail. 3 hours later, in the foyer of the Alcazar, Jane saw Spelvin at once. He stood there waiting elegantly, and his handsome face looked more thoughtful than she remembered. Jane felt this might be due to some ennobling experience. Actually, it was due to the fact that Spelvin was wondering what sort of woman he was about to meet, and how he'd recognize her. The truth was he had had no idea who'd phoned him, but he'd made it a rule never to turn down an attractive woman, and Jane had sounded very attractive on the phone. She hurried to his side.
Good morning, Rodney.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
You're looking good.
And you're looking splendid.
You're looking awfully well.
You look well, too.
You really are looking fine. Excuse me, glancing at my watch. I have an appointment at lunch with someone and it's past the time.
But you're lunching with me.
With you?
Yes, I rang you this morning.
Ah, it was you who phoned. I thought you said Miss Bates.
No, Mrs. Bates.
Mrs. Bates.
Mrs. Bates.
Of course, you're Mrs. Bates.
Had you forgotten me?
Forgotten you, dear lady, as if I could. Well, shall we go in and have lunch?
Jane felt ill at ease. The fact that Rodney clearly had forgotten her was a definite fly in the ointment. One might almost say a spanner in the works. It's hard to get someone to make a sacrifice for the sake of your ancient love if the party of the second part doesn't remember that there was an ancient love. Jane's disappointment was matched by Spelvin's. He thought this mysterious caller must be some ardent young fan who'd heap praise on his work as a prelude to hurling herself in his arms. Instead, he was trapped at a table with a woman who seemed vaguely resentful. His professional charm dried up, and conversation became fitful and awkward.
I must say, this morning I thought it was going to rain.
Yes, it did look like rain.
Now it seems much brighter.
A lot brighter.
And I think the weather may hold up all day.
Yes.
I hope so. Rain is such a bore.
Yes.
Still, it'll be summer soon.
Yes, I suppose it will.
Then we'll be complaining about the heat.
Heat can be very trying.
Of course, it's not really the heat one minds, so much as the humidity.
Yes.
This was their most sparkling exchange. From there on, it was all downhill. And of course, by the time they left the restaurant and parted, not a word had been said on the subject which had brought Jane to London. It was a totally innocent, not to say pointless, rendezvous. But this was not how it struck William Bates, watching from the other end of the room. His business concluded, he'd popped into the Alcazar for a sustaining chop, and was stunned to see his wife with a person who, unless his eyes deceived him, was the human gumboil Spelvin. William didn't confront him because he hated scenes, especially scenes in restaurants. Instead, he sat and gnashed his teeth. Indeed, he gnashed to such effect that a man at the next table asked the waiter to switch off the fan, which he said was creaking. Jane was reading in the drawing-room when William got home, hoping for some blameless explanation. After muted greetings, he proceeded carefully.
Had a nice day?
quite nice, thanks.
Play golf?
Just practice.
Lunch at the club?
Yes.
I thought I saw that bloke Spelvin in town today.
Spelvin? Oh, you mean Rodney Spelvin, did you? I see he's got a new book out.
Do you ever run into him these days?
Oh, no, never. It's years since I saw him.
Look, Jane, I'm a bit tired. Beastly day in town. I think I'll just put on a nightcap and turn in early.
There are few things sadder than the decline of a perfect marriage, so I shall not dwell on the rift that now affected the Bates household. Suffice it to say that on the morrow, William declined golf with Jane on grounds of a prior engagement. Next day he pleaded a headache, and the day after it was lumbago. The coolness spread to the home, where meals were taken in silence, and afterwards Jane went to the drawing room and William to his den. In short, if you added a couple of icons and a picture of Trotsky, you'd have the perfect setting for a Russian novel. It was clear to Jane that William knew of or suspected her contact with Spelvin. She couldn't think how nor what to do about it, but it was just a fact. Abigail still coached their son, and it was good to have her about. But as the story moves to its climax, she was away for the day, visiting friends. The midday post brought a letter for Abigail, addressed in Spelvin's hand. Jane stood it on the mantelpiece and sat looking at it for hours like a cat watching a canary. Every womanly instinct told her to boil the kettle and steam it open, but somehow she desisted. And then, at 3, the phone rang.
Hello?
Hello. Is that you?
Yes, it's me.
I knew it was. Your voice is like music.
Jane didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to deduce that Spelvin had mistaken her for Abigail. He wasn't good on female voices, she thought. Perhaps he'd heard too many. She resolved to maintain the deception.
Have you got my letter yet?
No, the post is often late around here. What is in it?
It's to ask you to come to my house tomorrow at 4.
To your house?
Yes. Everything's ready. I'll send the servants out, so we'll be quite alone. Please say you'll be there.
At 4, you say?
Yes. I'll meet you at the corner to save the doorbell disturbing the neighbours. You will come, won't you?
Yes. Yes, I'll be there.
You've made me the happiest man on earth. I say, what's that curious clicking noise?
I don't know. Pigeons on the wire, I expect.
Alas, the clicking sound was in fact the gnashing of William's teeth as he listened on the extension, a device new to Jane. At Spelvin's monstrous proposal, she'd asked herself what Gloria Gooch would do in such a crisis. The answer was plain. Gloria would go to the libertine's house herself to save the innocent from dishonour, and Jane would do the same. Abigail returned that evening and read her letter without comment, but at breakfast next morning she announced she'd be going to town that day.
I have to see my dressmaker.
I'll come along as well. I have to see my dentist.
I'll be coming too. I have to see my lawyer.
Perhaps we could all lunch together. My appointment's not until 4.
My appointment's at 4, too.
So is mine.
Splendid. Shall we all lunch together?
I shall be lunching at my club.
William seems to have a grouch.
William raised his fork and drove it with sickening violence into his sausage. He elected to catch an early train, but later the girls travelled to London together and lunched together at a confectioner's. There, over tongue and lettuce sandwiches and raspberry nut sundaes, they chatted busily about every subject under the sun except the one that concerned them most. At 3, they parted. Abigail babbling about her dressmaker, and Jane apparently apprehensive about the dentist. At 10 to 4, Jane approached Spelvin's house in Chelsea from the rear. She decided that a surprise confrontation would be the most effective, and recalled that Spelvin had a careless habit of leaving downstairs windows ajar. Thus, she entered the kitchen easily and made her way to the upstairs sitting room where she expected the rogue to bring his victim. She hadn't long to wait. Just after 4, she heard 2 pairs of footsteps mount the stairs and cross the landing. The door handle turned, and in strode William, followed by a man in a bowler hat.
Ha!
William, it's you.
So, I find you here, dash it.
Yes, but how did you get here? And who is this man?
This is Mr. Reg Brown of the Quick Results Detective Agency.
How do you do, ma'am?
Mr. Brown forced an entry through the French windows.
I don't know how Rodney ever gets this place insured.
I knew you'd be here at 4. I heard you fixed the assignation on the telephone. Where is your paramour?
What was that word again, sir?
Paramour. Your partner in sin, woman. Where is he? I intend to tear him into little bits and stuff him down his throat and make him swallow himself.
Have a care, sir.
William, I can explain everything.
Everything?
Everything?
Everything.
I'll bet you can't.
I bet I can.
Well?
Well?
I came here to save Abigail.
Abigail?
Abigail?
My sister. 1B and 1G. You came here to save my sister?
Yes, Abigail.
What from?
From Rodney Spelvin, of course. Oh, William, can't you understand?
No, I'm dashed if I can.
The poor child's infatuated with the man.
With Spelvin?
Yes, he's lured her here for an adventure.
But I heard you make the appointment.
He thought I was Abigail, so I came here to save her.
Came here to save her.
Look here. That's all very fine and large, but there's one thing wrong. I'm not a clever sort of bird, but I can see where your story slips up. If you're here to save Abigail, where is she?
Oh, a good point, sir, if I may say so.
I think I hear them coming now.
The lady is correct, sir. It is customary to hide at this stage.
Yes, hide, and quick.
Luckily, Spelvin's ornate salon afforded ample cover. The detective concealed himself behind the Chinese screen, William stood behind the curtains, and Jane died behind the Chesterfield. All were out of sight when the door opened and Spelvin ushered Abigail in. Jane could see nothing, but with every word she heard, her horror deepened.
Come in, dear lady. Give me your things, and then we can get started.
Don't rush me, Rodney. Give me a chance to get my breath back.
I can't wait. I've been living for this moment all day.
No, don't do that.
Why not, for heaven's sake?
Because it's wrong. Wrong.
I don't see why.
It's wrong, I tell you. No, Rodney, don't do that. Don't hold so tight.
There was a sudden swishing sound, and William burst out from behind the curtains. Jane raised her head above the Chesterfield, and Brown moved round the screen and licked his pencil. The sight that met their eyes was an unexpected one. Rodney was stooping slightly in the middle of the room, holding a brolly upside down. With a curved end, he was addressing a golf ball.
Why is it wrong to hold it tight? You've got to keep a grip on it.
Yes, but if you strangle it like that, you'll foozle.
Well, no doubt you're right, as always.
Look here! What is the meaning of this?
Hold with the fingers, not with the palms.
Right. Good Lord. What are all these people doing here?
I say again, what is the meaning of this? Abigail, what are you doing in this man's rooms?
Giving him a golf lesson, of course.
A golf lesson.
Rodney, this is my brother William and his wife. What they're doing here, I've no idea. Look, let's go upstairs and do it properly.
You will not go upstairs, Abigail.
I certainly will. Rodney has a proper practice area in his studio.
The next 5 minutes were filled with a torrent of questions and explanations worthy of an Aldwych farce. I think it easier if I sum up. Spelvin, once a golf hater, had suddenly seen the poetry of the game while at a weekend house party. Abigail, a fellow guest, had undertaken to teach him, and they'd been meeting for that purpose. But Spelvin had disliked having his first stumbling step seen on public courses and had made an indoor range in his studio. William was at last persuaded, but there remained one matter to resolve.
All right, I accept what you say. But golf tuition involves a lot of physical contact, what? And my sister comes to your home unchaperoned. Dash it all, have you asked her to marry you?
Marry me? Would that I dare? I love her with all my heart. But how could a girl who reached the semi-final of the Open marry a duffer like me?
Oh, Rodney, you poor chump. Is that what's held you back all this time? Don't you know I'm crazy about you? I'll marry you like a shot.
Abigail!
Rodney!
Well, I'm blowed. Jane, I'm afraid I've wronged you.
It was my fault.
No.
Yes, it was.
Oh, Jane.
William.
So Jane and William were reunited in connubial bliss, and Abigail married Rodney Spelvin, with whom she played 6 hours golf a day. Under the influence of this great game, Spelvin's writing became altogether more wholesome and uplifting. I'm put in mind of the tale of Ferdinand Dibble, who... What's that? You had to go? Oh, dear me. Oh, well, another time, then. Send the waiter over as you go, will you? Oh, thank you, yes. A large brandy would be most welcome.
Listen to the tale of a stalwart male who lost his well-known nanny. Donald was his name, and golf was the game that made him gray like his granny.
The Purification of Rodney Spelvin was narrated by Maurice Denham in the role of the oldest member. Jane was played by Sue Holderness, William by Julian Dutton, Rodney by John Glover, Abigail by Kathy Sarah, and Reg Brown by John Graham. The Oldest Member, written by P.G. Wodehouse, is adapted and produced by Edward Taylor.
By gosh, I sunk her. I get no fun in the air and sun, but down in the traps I labor. I swear then to weep where the sand is deep till I want to murder my neighbor.